my presentation. My name is Isik-Ercan. I'm from Rowan University, New Jersey. And this one will be a presentation about the ethical use of AI and other technology tools in qualitative research. Why is this important? Because we have a strong tradition in qualitative research, which is, as you know, you usually utilizing methods like interviews and very in-depth examination of data with people, human subjects, and also very important theoretical tradition, especially from critical perspectives and interpretive tradition, hermeneutics, if you will, about utilizing advance of researcher lens. And at the age of AI, there's this conflict and issue about to what extent we should use it, what are some ethical ways of using it in qualitative research. Which is very hard, as you know, the previous presentation, they also said, like, they got away from qualitative research because, the amount of data and it's just not matching with their goals. So I am going to really focus on the first part today, a framework for ethical use of AI in qualitative research. Try to watch my time, but if you have time, we can kind of like review pros and cons of using certain apps as well. And so just, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Viren Shah, who is the CDO of GE Appliances, the question that, he poses is how can we deploy AI to resolve exclusivity and build inclusivity? That's the one piece about, allowing new voices to emerge, but also how could that be a catalyst for equality and diversity. So on that note, when we think about pre-AI, when you think about researchers and English as second language speakers like myself, things are quite harder. And as you see, now we have different tools for translating, for putting our word out, and becoming more globally connected and in an equal space. Because pre-AI, you have this generation of scholars whose fathers, grandfathers, 2 centuries back were researchers or were elite, coming from elite background, and they could only access to the global space, if you will. And now post AI, I see that now we have a good area of free resources, and I feel like it is democratizing, equalizing the research field. But this view is not shared by folks who still take a traditional perspective. So how to resolve that, especially when it comes to qualitative research, where you really interact physically with all of the data, and it's just such a rich tradition coming from ethnography. Imagine people spending 5 years in a country, writing down every single thing. Like, it's just such a unique, way of seeing the truth and the research. So the question is, for us, for pre-AI, there were still questions about authenticity and integrity in the work. Why? Because we had ghost writers. You think about Obama's book, like or autobiography or whatever, it's over 1,000 pages. Nobody thinks he wrote it, right? Like, we all know he did not write it. There's always ghost speakers, ghost writers for those people who are really mass, like bestsellers, and those people have a lot of. So there's still this issue of authenticity and integrity, who did what, and there are unfortunately people who had their dissertations written. Like some of the Turkish politicians, if you will, with leaks of the email that was apparent, like they wrote their dissertations and whatnot. But then post-AI, the question for us researchers, and especially again qualitative research, is that researcher lens and authorship. Now, who wrote what is now a different question. Like, what part of what I'm written should be AI, and how do I make a decision, and how do I get really transparent about it? So the ethics, I think, is many of us share a certain way of ethics about not lying. Like, there's so many models and interesting things. So how do we handle that issue, as researchers? So how do we use AI ethically? As we know, everybody uses it from elementary schools and on. But I think it's more important to talk about how we use it and how do we kind of like frame it so that it's very clear and transparent and you're in ethical research. So, but in qualitative research, this notion of researcher lens is really important. We don't talk about, especially again from interpretive tradition, not positivists, not like scientists, in the sense of um, philosophy, like scientism as a philosophy, meaning that there's only one truth, I can only assess it by experimenting. In qualitative research, we take a different perspective and we value subjectivity. I'm interested in your opinions and your truth and not necessarily one truth that everybody has to agree on. So that's the challenge ontologically, epistemologically, when you think about what truth is good or what knowledge is valuable. Qualitative researchers value subjectivity. Like, I am interested in you because it's your human view. Like, it's not because we have to agree on everything. Researcher lens is so important. So that's what when I teach qualitative methods, and that's the reason why I did this, that I try to encourage my students. Like, if you wrote this study qualitatively, your perspective should be different than from another person who did the exact study. And that's the beauty, right? Like, that's why we get the humanness of it. So that's what I call researcher lens. It includes the specific individual lens the researcher brings to the table. So for instance, we have to, as qualitative researchers, we have to disclose our identity. And I wasn't comfortable, like, remember the discussion between, like, you write in the third person, like, you literally try to hide yourself. But is that really objective? Because, like, you, even as you do quantitative research with numbers, you still bring your identities from the choice that you make, the research question, why you want to prove something because you believe in something. But it's kind of like hidden and it's not as explicit or like honest, like if from the qual perspective. And I'm not trying to have a discussion which one is better, that's not, because we do have quant research from critical lens, also done, like it's not like quant versus qual discussion for me. But I think, I honestly like had to understand that my identity was okay in research spaces, and now I could be more like explaining who I am in the research, and that I know that it's welcome in this particular tradition. So the researcher lens is very important, especially in the age of AI, where we discuss what is a human anyway, right? Like that discussion of like what makes us human is very relevant in this conversation. Because then you're talking about the philosophies of the purpose of intellectual pursuit, the knowledge production, learning, and research. You have your philosophies, you have your theories, you have your life experiences as a person and a professional in a specific context, and then you have your identity and culture, which in the recent years, which is nice, that qualitative research also started welcoming a whole human experience. So, like, you can now put out your spirituality, like it's like becoming this more holistic space for us researchers, and it's welcome, it's more inclusive. So then the question is, there's two conflict zones for us to think about. How can I make full use of digital tools available while at the same time fully use my researcher lens? Like, how do I not lose it and not get lazy or not explore it enough? And then also, how can we resist the tendency to simplify the data? Because in qualitative research, what we say, rich is good, in-depth is good, you cannot superficially dumb this experience. And if you can do research with even yourself, one person, 3%, but you have to have maybe hundreds of hours of data to go deeper. So the deeper and richer is like the keywords in quality research. So then how do we do it in the age of AI where it says everything should be simplified, like one click, put in that, get the output. So what does it happen then? So then the process of qualitative research is a couple, series of stages. So first you collect a large number of data. So you might interview people, and in return, like in my dissertation, I had 70 hours of just pure audio data that I have to translate. And if you think about translating 1 hour, it was like 5 hours of like work to just translate that. So in the end, you have humongous amounts of data. And then not only that, you have observational data, you write down stuff, you have textual data, you go to websites, and you have a humongous amount of data, and it's somewhat hard to manage. So then you have to have this data reduction process, what we call in many traditions, we do coding, like we code the data, and then we try to, and from quant's perspective, we will understand like tagging and indexing and all that process. And then you have also reflective and evaluative pieces where, like, where do you go from there? How do you then create trees of understanding. How do you combine the data and how do you arrive what we call categories? Categories are arrays of like organizing your data further. You're not finding anything just yet. But then the generative side is that now how do I make sense of my data is where you almost like write a story. And I'll show you a picture which will make sense. But with the administrative processing tasks, what you do is sorting, organizing data, APA, reference check, finding, capturing literature, technical coding. The reflective side of it is that determining how much data is sufficient, what type of data is collected, how a finding is determined, a strong, viable answer. And now with generative, telling the story, it's about writing more, the generative piece, like telling the story in a way that you use your researcher lens, you use sensory, cognitive, emotional, and spiritual dimensions of your being, to come up with that writing. And that's what, if you think about writing, that's what separates from, like if you think about like Tolstoy's writing, there is a specific person behind it, and you can see that it's very unique to that human being. So then I came up with this ethical use of in AI kind of like framework, and it's not like I discovered something, I just organized it. So it's not like a new invention or anything, but I'm just recommending that we use it this way. This is not a research, this is a conceptual framework. So in this framework, for the administrative and processing data, what I recommend the young people, like new researchers, is that we need to use AI very heavily, in that first process because it's very technical for us. It's about like really processing and generative tools, qualitative research software, heavily data sorting and organization tool. But then in here, what I recommend is that as we write our methodology, like how we did this research, we actually explain how we have used AI heavily, like as qualitative researchers, again, like to be on the ethical side and to be very clearly. And then on the reflective aspects is that just reflecting on the context, people dynamics, one-on-one subjectivity, ethics, and community in making decisions about each part of research design. And this part, I think, is very human. It's a very like holistic process. So I recommend that we use them rarely because this reflective tasks are where you are interacting with your data. It's like your reactions, your commentaries, your meaning-making process, understanding that. So you're engaging your complex dimensions here, your identity, beliefs, paradigms, metaphysics, emotions, fears, hopes, and ethics. So there, I think, to keep that rich, we should rarely use editing, with that. And then for evaluative tasks, it's like, think about this. So for instance, if you want to create a team, you need to see how much like something appears in your data. So that you could recognize, okay, this is a general pattern. So for instance, if I'm making the claim that like my dissertation was Turkish American children sometimes hide or sometimes make visible their religious identities depending on the context. And in order to get to that finding, and that was one of the sub findings, I had to prove that it occurs enough times in my data to make that claim, right? Like so it's still like a math, there's math in that. But evaluative tools could be used as assurance, with frequency counting and with other ways to help you with an assurance of evaluating the confidence in your claims. But then for the creative task, when we think about just thematizing the findings, structuring organizations, and presenting findings in a written, visual, and performative modality, that's about presentation, that's about creativity. That should be heavily research-driven. And I still say that we can use AI and other tools in polishing, formatting, presenting, proofreading, and citing, and visual assistance, like create me a flyer. I just created the flyer 2 days ago. Like those are just technical, but then also in the actual producing the ideas and thought process, it should be our brain who's doing that. And another visualization of the whole research process in general, but definitely for qualitative research, this is how we move it. So that the last picture is the explain to the story part is and supposed to for us to change from person like my house will be different than your house. And to us, it's the quality indicator. But if we use AI heavily in evaluate reflective and creative sides of things, we're going to use the humanness in our research. That presents the danger of, again, the discussion of how do we enact and, act on our humanness, as researcher, is going to be like a danger zone for us. So that's what it is. I have 3 minutes left. So then, I just summarized it, what I said, basically. And then I think I'm going to stop here, but maybe just give an example of. So for instance, maybe if you have tools, you can do that also in the questions too, but there's one tool, not the generative, but just like an AI tool, explainpaper.com. This is a free tool with help with digesting literature findings. I actually recommend it to my students because what it does is it gives you the option of producing the output in any level that they want. They want it 5th grade level, they get it. Undergrad level, they get it. Grad level, they get it. And it just gives them, in however way I want to understand this whole text is fine. But then again, still, remember part of knowledge production, like production, not consumption. Like you could read books, but you're not producing. If you don't compare contrast, if you don't make connections, if you don't link and you can't see even machine models like linking is what produces knowledge. If you just explain the paper in a way that your brain don't interact with the papers itself, but you just get the regurgitated version of the short version, it pushes people to laziness at the end of the day. So like, I'm not going to find anyone who's willing to do literature review, but this is where you build initial knowledge, right? Like, so how do I make sense of the existing data kind of thing? And then this is another tool, Ask Humata AI is the free tool to help with asking questions about an article. That's again the same line, fine. Mm. And then there's this one is quillbot.com. The ethical piece of it is that this is a tool that allows you to paraphrase something, which is where I think the danger starts. Yeah. Because when you start paraphrasing, again, remember the discussion, like you're not using your creativity or like reflectivity, or just don't react it. Just have them paraphrase for you. I think it's ethically problematic there. So I really welcome your discussions and ideas. Same with the like citation machine method. That was the same thing, it paraphrased for you if you wanted to. So you see, like there's a lot of tools now. People could be just lazy, sitting down and having these tools to do the literature. And I want to have that. Really, I'm curious about your thoughts about these things. And then that's about it. I have so many like qualitative research free tools I can share with you if you wanted to just send me an email. My email is ercan at roman.edu. Thank you.